event. Right, very good. Good evening and Mir Mbrema. Before I introduce our speaker, Michael Gunn, I will say a few words about the Anglo-Albanian Association's plans for the next few months. This evening's book launch is our final event of 2021 and is a purely Zoom event. Last month, we enjoyed a talk by the new British ambassador to Albania, Alistair King-Smith, who gave us his first impressions. He's, I think, joining us here this evening, but I haven't seen him on the screen. This was kindly hosted by the Albanian ambassador at Chiriaco Circo at the Albanian embassy here in London and conveyed to a larger audience via Zoom. So it was a good hybrid mix of platforms, and we hope to be able to revert to this system for the centenary events, which we are planning together with our ambassador in Tirana and Albania's ambassador here to celebrate 100 years of bilateral relations between our two countries. For example, we plan a talk in January by an eminent British explorer who has followed in the footsteps of Byron and Edward Lear. A leading philatelist will take us through Albania's history as illustrated via postage stamps, ranging from Ottoman stamps through the Zog era and Enver Hoxha's period of rule to the present day. We're then planning a talk by a prominent Balkan writer, to be followed by a talk at the RAI, the Royal Anthropological Institute, by a French scholar who will be talking about Edith Durham's papers and art. And an illustrated talk on the bird life of Albania and bird conservation is also planned. I just wanted to give you a taste of what we have in the pipeline. We got to know Michael around the millennium, with his joining the Anglo-Albanian Association, not only as a member of the AAA, but also a board member. He was unusual in that he showed a deep and genuine interest in Albanian affairs and history. This bore fruit particularly during our period of focus on Skanderbeg, the national hero. In 2016, we put on a Skanderbeg symposium at Pembroke College, Cambridge. And then in response to a universal call from Tirana, we decided to join Albania's Year of Skanderbeg with another symposium in 2018, which we put on at the British Academy in London with generous support from the Butrint Foundation. Michael, in collaboration with Alison Carter, played a key role in preparing text for the information panels, which accompanied the New G collection display of antiquarian books on Skanderbeg at the British Academy. In his CV, Michael describes himself as being British, and then there's a brackets of Scottish ethnicity, end brackets. And thus I would say, well placed to draw parallels between Scottish and Albanian kinship systems. He went to school at Wandsworth Grammar School in London and excelled in ancient history, which meant Sumeria, Assyria, Babylonia, Egypt, Greece, and Rome. And he was a precocious art student and attended the Camberwell School of Art, just down the road from where I'm sitting. And this was very much encouraged by his father. In his CV, Michael says, quotes, "I have no formal qualifications, academic qualifications," he's talking about. "I have no formal academic qualifications, never having attended anything more than art college." But he adds, throughout his life, he has maintained a deep interest in history, anthropology, and art. His interest in anthropology was further stimulated when he was taken towards the end of World War II to live with his grandparents in Caithness. His grandfather was a member of the clan Gunn, and his grandmother was a Gaelic-speaking member of the clan Mackenzie from the Isle of Lewis. Michael became an expert on the histories of the North Highland Scottish clans and has written 2 books on the subject. After his father's death, Michael and his family moved to Caithness, where he restored the family home, Kirkhill House, only returning to London in 2006. Alongside his love for history and anthropology, Michael has pursued an impressive career in microfilming and microphotography, and is an acknowledged expert in this rarefied and much sought after field. I will leave it to him to talk in detail about the 2 really important figures, Anthony Breyer and Betula Destani, who were so influential in persuading Michael to study the history and anthropology of Albania, which finally led to the writing and publication of this book, Michael's magnum opus. Over to you, Michael.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for that marvelous introduction. Thank you and good evening, everyone. Miren Brema, Falamindere, Je Miren Brema, Te Jiteve. I hope I got my pronunciation modestly right. Probably not, but anyway, there we are. The rest will be in English, so hopefully you'll understand. Well, where to begin? The seeds of this book were sown nearly 60 years ago in 1962. In that year, I was working as a photographer in the photographic department of the British Museum, which then also housed the British Library collection before it moved eventually much later to St Pancras. A man named Anthony Breyer commissioned me to take some photographs which were to illustrate an article he was writing about a man I had never heard of before, called Skanderbeg. Breyer very kindly showed me his article about this man, who I later came to know as Albania's national hero, Gjergj Kastrioti Skanderbeu, who lived from 1405 to 1468. I was immediately struck by the similarity between Skanderbeg's life and that of Scotland's own national hero, Sir William Wallace of Elderslie, better known today as Braveheart after the Mel Gibson film. Both men had dedicated their lives to the fight for freedom for their respective countries, Albania and Scotland. And I resolved there and then to write a book about the Albanian people. As so often happens, life events intervened, including courtship, marriage, and the birth of my 2 children, Alexander and Victoria. And it was not until 1991 that Skanderbeg and Albania again came to the fore. In that year, I was working at the Royal Anthropological Institute in London, where I was carefully examining the notebooks and journals of Edith Durham, a great friend of the Albanians and someone who was among the first to bring them to the attention of the wider world. A friend of mine, Beverly Amory, who was then library assistant at the Royal Anthropological Institute, mentioned that someone had arrived in London who she suggested I ought to meet. That someone was Betula Destani, a Kosovo-Albanian intellectual who had fled the conflict in the Balkans. We met and became fast friends, and over the next few years, we discussed how better to bring Albania and the Albanian people to the wider notice of the world. It was Betula who, after many discussions, suggested that I should take up again my idea to write a book about the Albanian clans. and the rest, as they say, is history. Betula was then attempting to bring the plight of the Albanians to the world's notice, but at the time he was a virtual unknown. But now he's a respected member of the Albanian intelligentsia, the founder of the Centre for Albanian Studies in London, and a member of the diplomatic staff of the Republic of Kosovo, and has been Minister Councillor at the Kosovo embassies in both London and Rome. The book, which runs to a massive 512 pages and 250,000 words, contains entries for over 100 tribes, or feasts as they're known in Albanian, nearly 500 brotherhoods and clans, this is the Velazari and Linja, and many hundreds of families. And it also describes 97 banner brigades, as I call them, barracks in Albanian. These were the local militias instituted by the Ottomans and which became an integral part of the Albanian clan system. The book comes complete with notes on pronunciation to assist non-Albanian speakers, a very kind introduction by Mark and Prenda Palnikai of Tirana, several appendices, an extensive bibliography, a glossary, an index, and 177 illustrations, many of which I commissioned especially for this work. I've been very lucky to have had the services of two friends, my fellow artist Dennis Dowland, whose skill in digital graphics has enhanced many of the old photographs which illustrate the work, and he has also designed and drawn several of the maps. And also Mark Franklin, a talented designer and graphic artist, who also created several maps and some of the heraldic illustrations. Their contributions have greatly enhanced the book's appeal. I have enjoyed my journey through the history of the Albanians. They are wonderful people who share many similarities with my own nation, the Scottish Highlanders. I designed my book as a primer for the lay reader to introduce Albania and the Albanian people to a wide audience. As such, it makes no pretense to be a purely academic work. It is simply the story of the Albanian tribes, clans and families, their agnatic social groups, presented in an easily searchable and useful form, which I hope will become a well-used reference book. I used my familiarity and knowledge of the Scottish Highland clans to point out both the similarities and the differences between the Albanian and the Scottish clan systems. And can I take this opportunity of thanking all those of you who very kindly ordered advance copies of the book. You are our publishing angels, without whom the work might not have been printed. To those of you who have not yet ordered, please do so soon. This is a limited edition and unlikely to be reprinted. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your kind attention. Faleminderit shumë, Sonia J. Zotarini, her Dimension Tue. Over to you, Stephen.
Right, well, thank you, Michael. That was, we now know exactly what we're talking about. Your book sounds...
The book, I shall hold it up for you to...
yes, that's a good idea, yes, yes.
Can you see that all right? Yeah.
And how much does it weigh, Michael?
2.1 kilos.
Right, very good. It's quite a tome, yes.
It is, yes, yeah.
I think what we need to do is open up to questions and answers. So you're ready to take questions, Michael, presumably.
Of course, yes, go ahead. I'll answer whatever question I can answer.
Very good. Over to you in the audience then. Any questions? Any questions coming?
I've got a question.
Right, good. Joanna, thank you. Yes, let's hear your question.
Hi, Michael. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, Joanna. How are you?
Fine, and you?
Yeah, well, been a bit of a day. Don't ask.
Could you perhaps tell us a bit more about how you did the research? You know, this is a very Albano-centric book. I mean, so many of your sources, whether they're written, oral, folk, they must be in Albania. You know, how did you go about organizing the research?
Well, I first of all spent a great deal of time in the British Library, as you may well mention, doing all the usual works that one would look at. I also went to a number of other special libraries who had holdings, and I established. Someone else talking? I can't know. I established a questionnaire, which I sent out to hundreds of Albanians, asking them to fill them in and return them to me. And a lot of the information that they kindly supplied me is noted in the book, and they are thanked for it.
How did you select the Albanians you sent these questionnaires to?
Oh, well, I had to cover as broad a range from both North and Southern Albania, and from I'm getting a bit of a feedback from somewhere somehow. Yeah, I had to select names from Northern Albania, Southern Albania, from North Macedonia, and from Montenegro. And what I did was I investigated first of all the major tribes or feasts. That was absolutely essential to coming to grips with the landscape of the Albanian people, because you see, they ranged right across the Balkans. They weren't confined to Albania. I mean, if you look at the 14th century, there were Albanians then in Thessaloniki who actually moved across to Ohrid and back again. You know, and this type of migration was very common, I found, amongst the Albanian tribes, particularly those who were breeding cattle and horses, sheep and goats. So, you know, they'd spend the winter in the lowlands where it was much warmer, and in the summer they'd head for the mountain pastures. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right.
Well, I hope that's answered some of your question, if not all of it.
Donica Barza, I believe, has a question. Is that right?
Okay. Yeah. She's muted at the moment. Yeah.
Can I just ask that until you've asked a question, if you could mute yourself until you've asked a question, then mute yourself back again. And I think after that, we've got Gabriel Patos.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Yeah,
yes.
Who is that?
Okay. This is Danica. Can you? I'm sorry.
I can hear you, Danica.
Okay. I have two questions.
Okay.
My first question is, what period are you focused on in the book?
Oh, yes. Yes.
What period of time? And my second question is, I'd love to hear some of the, before I have a chance to see the book and read the book, which I really look forward to, can you highlight a few of the similarities between the Albanian Highlanders and the Scottish?
Yes, I think I can do that. In the first instance, I had to look at what my cutoff dates were going to be. I did not want to go as far back as the Illyrian period, because there was not really sufficient material from that period to list lots and lots of clans. So I decided to start my time scale in the 10th century. Now, the 10th century is quite interesting. Right across Europe, it is in the 10th century that great magnates start to become princes, dukes, and eventually kings. And this upgrading of their status led to their followers wanting to have some form of status and recognition. So that's where the clan chiefs come in, and the end date, I decided, would have to be somewhere around the Second World War. Actually, I do include some things right up until the Kosovo War, but by and large, mostly my study of the clans ends in 1945, when Enver Hoxha more or less attempted to destroy them by eliminating many of the Bayraktars and clan chiefs, and there was quite a hiatus after the Second World War in people understanding who they were and where they came from. Hoxha's regime was absolutely tyrannical and quite awful. There was no comparison with his regime and what happened in the Highlands. We had the Highland clearances, but the Highland clearances did not prevent people from remembering their ancestry and their clan links. In fact, quite the opposite. It reinforced them. But Hoxha was able, with his political apparatus, to totally destroy the clan system in Albania, and it's just about starting to recover. I would guess. I hope. Does that answer your question, Donica? Hello? Hello?
Donica, you're muted again.
Any further similarities between the Albanian Highlanders and the Scottish?
Oh, well, very many, yes. But there are also differences in the way in which the clan is organized. In Albania, I have I can't really, it won't show up very well on the screen, but in Albania, I have a schematic diagram showing how the tribes, clans, and families are related, and how they are connected, albeit artificially, with the Bayraks. Now, in the Highlands, in terms of similarities, the Albanian Bayraks are really to be equated with the Scottish Highland regiments, because they were formed for very much the same reasons and with the same intent. And they were always drawn from local areas where they would have a local clan magnate who was the colonel of the regiment in Scotland, and he would be the equivalent of a Bayraktar in Albania. And the regiments were designed, in Albania, they were designed to do the work that the Ottoman Turks wanted. Whereas in the Highlands, the clan regiments were designed to try to create, and were used quite successfully, to create the British Empire. Are we getting somewhere? Yeah. Does that answer your question, Donica?
Yes, thank you. Sorry about.
Thank you for your question. Thank you.
We've got a question, I think, from Gabriel Patos.
Okay.
Could,
Okay.
could he speak up?
Thank you, Stephen. Michael, can I ask you, you described the way in which the Hodja regime tried to eliminate the clan system and the chieftains.
Yeah.
To what extent has there been a revival since the end of communist rule in the early 90s? To what extent has there been a revival, either in a practical or perhaps more in a kind of ceremonial way?
I don't think, sorry to interrupt you, but I don't think there actually has been a proper revival yet. In the Scottish Highlands, after the Battle of Culloden in 1746, all the clans chiefs were prescribed, and they weren't allowed to lead their clans. But when in 1788 that law was repealed, it was found that the Scottish Highlanders made great warriors for the young about to become British Empire. And in Albania, after Hodja, there was a sort of a vacuum, a terrible vacuum. A lot of people didn't know what their original family name was. That had been erased from the record. And Hodja happily went around arresting people left, right, and centre, and he especially did this to the Bayraktars and the clan chiefs, because they had a political power and a following which he did not like at all, not one little bit. And I think that Albania and the Albanians, because we're not just talking about Albania itself, we're talking about the rest of the Balkan lands inhabited by Albanians. I think the time has not yet arrived when the clan system in Albania will be sort of revived. Because, I mean, in Britain, we had a massive revival in the 1960s. And it is now, 2021, and I don't see that revival yet in Albania. I do hope it does come. And because I think the clan system plays such an important part in binding families together, and it's really important. So I do hope it does come in Albania. Now, another thing that might be of interest is that the Albanians didn't really get very much interested in heraldry, whereas in Scotland, we're deeply imbued with it. In fact, it's part of the law of the land. You cannot just fly a flag in Scotland without the Lord Lion's permission. So in Albania, the system of heraldry didn't really exist. They just simply adopted what the Byzantine Empire had left behind, and that's not a proper system of heraldry at all. It just uses a few symbols. And the Ottomans, when they came in, they had all of their flags, but their flags all had inscriptions in Arabic from the Quran. They weren't heraldic flags at all. In fact, the only heraldic flags I know associated with the Seljuks and the Ottomans is a single double-headed eagle that only one man was allowed to carry as a representative of the entire horde, as it were. So if you look around at different countries, a lot of countries have heraldic systems. Scotland has probably the most developed in the world, but Japan has its own heraldic system. The Germans have one. Even the Serbs have one. They have a court of the White Eagle, but the Albanians didn't get around to establishing a court of the Black Eagle, which I think they ought to think about doing. But that, of course, is down to the Albanians themselves, their chiefs and their Bayraktars that still exist. Does that in any way answer your question, Gabriel?
Very much so. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for asking. Thank you.
Now, I think we have a question from Ariane Hilai.
Okay.
Ariane Hilai, are you there? And answer came there none.
I think he's actually written his down. He says that the late Robert Elsey wrote a similar book on Albanian tribes, northern tribes. What's different in your book? Yes.
Right. Okay. I can answer that quite easily. Robert was a dear friend, and his sudden death was a great loss to us and to everybody involved with albanology. He sent me, before his death, a copy of his book on the Albanian tribes. And of course, I accessed that quite happily. But his book was about 250 pages, I think, if memory serves me correct. And mine is 512 pages. It has a greater number of clans, a greater number of barracks. And of course, I've researched the Lazari, the brotherhoods, and the Linja, the family lineages, which Robert did not get time to do. Had he lived, I'm sure he would have done it. He would have written this book, not me. But this book is actually dedicated to Robert Elsey because of the work that he did. I mean, if you look at his website, it's unbelievable the amount of work that he got through in his brief life. Unbelievable and very impressive. Does that go in some way to answer your question? Hello?
Hello?
I don't think his microphone is working, but I'd say yes on his behalf.
Okay. Yes.
Can we now go to Richard Hargreaves? Whose name I see there?
Yeah.
Yes, good evening. As I've travelled quite a bit in the mountains of northern Albania and in the Scottish Highlands in a modest way, in relatively recent years. Can you give us some kind of snippet of anything, similarities or marked differences between sort of family customs, culture, dress, sort of a general feel, a bit of a feeling about people, any differences and similarities between people in northern Albania and the Highlands on a slightly more personal level, if you have information about it?
Yes, I have. Well, I do go into this in some depth in my book, in various parts of the book. There are a number of similarities between the Scottish clan system and the Albanian clan system, but there are also a number of very interesting differences. For example, in the blood feud, the Albanians have something called the rule of boiling blood. I don't know if you've heard of that. Now, the rule of boiling blood is quite interesting in that what it means is that in the immediate aftermath of a killing, someone in the clan, the Albanian clan, can kill anybody in the Albanian opposite number, the person who started the feud, within the first sort of 24 hours while the blood is boiling. Now, after that, the Albanians are restricted to killing the person, the one person who actually started the feud. In the Highlands of Scotland, the blood feud runs very differently indeed. In the Highlands, you start a feud with one man and you end up being got at by the whole of his clan. They will come for you and your clan, the whole of it. And as James VI said, we will bang on, us and them, until everyone's dead. So there is a difference very much in the blood feud, and I do go into this in some detail in the book. Does that help you in any way?
That's very interesting. Yes, thank you very much. I don't want to get caught up in a blood feud. And I'll look out for it, no.
Well, my own clan, we had a blood feud that started in 14 1488, and it did not finish for 500 years when a truce was formally signed at the site of the where the chapel, where the original blood feud started. So for 500 years, we actually were at enmity with another Scottish clan.
Well, which part of the islands was that?
Well, in Caithness.
In Caithness.
Yes, yes.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for asking the questions. Yeah.
Right, we've got a question from Lance Butler. Lance, over to you.
I'm afraid, I'm terribly sorry. It isn't a real question. I'd left myself unmuted, and I was simply being told by my wife that I've got to go and make a phone call, which I do have to do. So I'm very sorry. Not only do I not have a question, but I'm going to have to say goodbye. But this was very interesting so far, and lovely to see you, Stephen. So sorry.
You too, Lance.
Right. Bye for now.
Then
we will turn to Gazim Alpion.
Oh, Gazim, lovely. Yeah.
Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Michael.
Hello, Gazim. Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you. Well, you and I, we do exchange views, and I am delighted that you let me into some of the insights that you given earlier. That's much appreciated. Good evening, everyone. You said, Michael, that you did not go beyond the 10th century in your book, and as such, you didn't cover the Illyrian tradition of tribes, but
I did mention them in passing. I mentioned them in passing, and we have got a couple of maps of the Illyrians, and we mentioned the Illyrians who became emperors.
Absolutely.
Because that was really an important thing that couldn't be left out. But I did not want to get bogged down.
No, absolutely.
About families that no longer exist.
Yeah. So but the fact that you went as early as 10th century, it's Illyrian enough to me. So I think that's fascinating. And the question, or rather the thought that I have is, I wonder if, as you were researching these clans, you came to an idea that the clan structure of Albania, to some extent, is symbolic in miniature of how the Illyrian society operated. And given that the Illyrians were very rarely capable of organizing alliances, that kind of, how shall I call it, provincialism, divisive nature of how society operates to some extent is a reflection of that tradition. And as I'm interested in religion, I wonder if at some point you thought as to what exactly held these clans together for so long. Was there any element of faith that played any role in cementing that kind of identity?
I have a whole chapter on religion amongst the Albanians. And the first thing really to note, most importantly, it was the early presence of first the Benedictine order, then the Dominican order, and latterly, as it still is, the Order of Franciscans. All these three Catholic orders proselytized the Albanian people very heavily in various ways, but their priests gained a very high acceptance among the Albanian people who had, let's face it, the Albanian people started off, like all of us in the Dark Ages, as pagans, and they had all these different gods and so on. I mentioned how many of the early gods of the Illyrians, how they were transmuted into modern day saints, and these became very, very important as sort of rallying points and celebratory points, because I list all of the feasts that the different Albanian clans have for different saints, and how important the ritual of the feast was a thing that drew all of the family together. They would come for miles around to one main person's house and celebrate with roast goat and stuff like that. And you know, these feasts went on for hours and hours and hours through the night, and there was much drinking of wine and raki involved. So as far as the Muslims were concerned, many of them just seemed to have ignored the prohibition of alcohol and got on with enjoying the Albanian wine and raki. Is that partly the way to?
Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we turn to Castriot Frashery, who has a comment?
Okay.
And then we have a question from Vicky Gunn.
Oh, Vicky.
Or two questions. But let's go to Castriot Frashery first.
Okay. Where is he?
Hello, Castriot Frashery. Are you there?
Yes, good evening.
Hello, Castriot, my friend. How are you?
Greeting from Tirana.
Lovely to see you.
My compliments and congratulations go to author and his book.
Thank you very much, Castriot.
I am looking forward to reading it in Albanian language.
Oh, yes.
In Albania.
Yeah, I will. I am hoping that we will do an Albanian language version, but we can't do it until we've sold the stock of books that we've already got. You know, a lot of them have been sold, but we need to sell off the rest of the stock because that's publishing.
I am sure that author finding will be interesting. Look. Panorama, the picture of the Albanian tribes and family and clans that have domination over the time.
Thank you very much, Castriot. I hope it will.
Congrats.
Thank you so much.
Michael, I have two questions from Vicky.
Okay.
She cannot speak them because she's on a bus in the Scottish countryside.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yes.
I will speak them. Okay. Firstly, did clans own particular saints?
Yes.
Own particular saints. And the other question, or did clans all have the same saints?
Right. Well, the answer to the first question is that yes. Particularly amongst the North Highland clans, a lot of whom were Roman Catholic or Eastern Orthodox, they all had an important saint. They had a secondary saint and a tertiary saint, and they were celebrated at different times of the year. But their most important saint was the one that they rallied around, if you like. It provided a religious focal point for the whole clan. What was the other question? I'm sorry, I've forgotten that.
Or did clans all have the same saints?
Well, a lot of the northern clans had Saint George, as you might understand, as their primary saint. A lot of them also had St. Michael the Archangel. These are both warrior saints, and that's not surprising for a warrior nation like the Albanians. That they were first and foremost breeders of cattle, breeders of goats, breeders of sheep, but they were mighty warriors too, and marvelous mountain fighters.
All right. Well, those are the questions from Vicky. We can now turn to Rodney Oliver, who has a question.
Yeah.
Yes, I am in my days about 10 years ago. I visited a family in the Skreli clan
Oh, it's really, yeah.
Near Kopliku, it's north of Skoda.
Yeah.
And I was not able, I had it translated to me that they wished me to marry one of their daughters.
Oh, nice.
And I just wondered if that was fairly common to try and, presumably they, as I was a British citizen, and of course I could flip the visa laws. But the other thing was, one of the girls in the family was separated from the husband and was a mother of a child, and surprisingly, the male side of the family pinched the child.
Yeah,
he was not going to see the child again. Is that common, the male dominance?
Well, the Albanian agnatic system is patrilineal, totally, whereas the Scottish clan system is allows the rights of the female part of the clan. Yes. And in fact, we have a number of Scottish chiefs who are women. I recall being taken when I was about 7 years old to Dunvegan in Skye to meet Dame Flora MacLeod, who was then chief of the clan MacLeod, because the Gunns have a connection with the MacLeods going back to the Viking era. It was a marvelous experience to meet this grand lady, and then for her gilly to take me to the oubliette, the bottle dungeon, and lower me down into it. So I've actually been imprisoned in Dunvegan Castle. And these things are so important, I feel, in keeping families together, and the history and the linkage.
Well, thank you very much. I've ordered a copy of your book anyway.
Oh, by the way, Rodney,
I look forward to it.
Oh, thank you. How good. Yes, you have. I saw that. Now, you mentioned about someone wanting you to marry one of their daughters.
Yes.
In the Scottish Highlands, in the old days, one of the ways in which a chief could increase his land was to marry his son to the daughter of another clan who had a bit more land than he did. And this reached its sort of apogee when the Campbells took a child from one of the East Coast clans, took the child, raided the castle, and abducted the child and took her back to Argyll, and she was brought up as a Campbell, and in the end the Campbells claimed this land and they've got it today. That's what happens when you get involved in that sort of thing. Okay. Yeah.
Can you tell us something about inheritance of lands? Is it patrilineal at all in the clans? Because they don't do testaments as such, do they, in writing?
In Albania, yes. It is primarily patrilineal, and there are ways in which a woman can get part of the inheritance. She can never get the entire inheritance, and she certainly cannot inherit the chiefship of a clan. Whereas in Scotland, it's quite different. In Scotland, a female may inherit and is allowed to under Scottish law. We also accept the cognatic side. The thing with Scottish law is it is a mixture. It goes back to the Irish Brehon laws, but is overlaid by Pictish laws, by Viking laws, and latterly by the medieval laws of Scotland.
Right.
So it is quite a complicated legal structure.
Yes.
In the clan. It's quite different in Albania. In Albania, the clans work in a way. You see, you've got to remember that they were often just simply clients of the Ottomans doing their bidding for money. Bayraktar, when Bayraktar was appointed, he got a lovely sword, a big sum of cash, and the rights to do certain things within the Ottoman Empire. But this was a thing they used. The Ottomans used this all over their empire. They did it with the Crimean Khans, and they did it in other parts of the Ottoman Empire. This was different to what happened in Scotland.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Right. We have a question from Alexander Duma.
Oh, Alexander, yes.
Hello.
And after that question, there is one from Lawrence Jaffarai.
Oh, lovely. Hello, Alexander. Lovely.
Hello, Michael.
Alexander,
If I may take you back to the answer you gave to, I think, your first question, when you were asked about researches you had done and where you had done your researches.
Yeah.
Did you do any or much research in Albania, or was it really basically conducted through works elsewhere, probably here?
I did not do research in Albania, and there was a very good reason for that. I don't speak Albanian.
Well, I did wonder, because
I do have a lot of Albanian words, but I can't hold a conversation, and therefore cannot read. I can read Latin reasonably well, but the thing is that the libraries in Britain are stuffed full of all sorts of wonderful things, and I got a huge amount. I'd say I got 30% of what I needed for the book.
Right.
Books and manuscripts. I have a special access to special libraries granted to me many years ago, and so I can get in and read stuff that a lot of people aren't allowed to read.
Mm-hmm.
I can handle manuscripts that people aren't allowed to see, let alone touch, and I've done all that I can do in the various special libraries in Great Britain.
Good. I just wondered, because I didn't think you were an Albanian speaker, and I wondered how you managed to get on looking through Albanian records.
Poor Aida Zairi tried to give me a lesson, but I'm afraid I was just too busy.
It's complicated.
To keep it
complicated.
No, I mean you'll see if you get a copy of my book, you will.
Oh, I certainly shall.
Oh, lovely! I do hope so. But if you will see that I use the Albanian diacritic system, but I double it with an anglicization of the name.
I see.
Because I wanted the book to be as widely exposed to people as possible.
Very good. Thank you.
Does that answer your question, Alex?
That certainly does. Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you so much. Lovely to see you.
Thank you.
Now, Michael, we have this question from Lawrence Jaffarai, which I'll read out, because he says, "Dear Stephen, I am in a noisy environment, cannot speak. Can you read out the following? Thank you very much, Michael, for your tremendous work in writing this heavyweight book on Albanian tribes, clans, and families. I'm wondering if and to what an extent you were able to elaborate on what was the influence the Albanian clans had on national politics across the borders in neighboring states."
Yeah. Well, firstly, they had a political interest right up until the Second World War, but after the Second World War, the Hoxha regime virtually destroyed the power of the chiefs and the power of the Baraktars, and they did not have the kind of influence that might have stopped all the fighting and feuding that continued afterwards. I'm thinking of what happened in what we must now call North Macedonia, particularly. I mean, I remember watching the news reports of the sniping going on there with abject horror. It was so sad what was happening.
Right. Now we have a question from Malcolm Howe.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Malcolm? Where are you? Well, if he doesn't ask a question, then we can go to Admira Mara.
Okay.
Admira Mara.
Hello.
Hi, sorry, no, that was a mistake. Well, I wasn't intending to ask a question. I'm sorry about that. But very interesting, very, very interesting discussion. And I'm looking forward to buying your book.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes, indeed. Yes, thank you so much for all your research and yeah, and all this beautiful meeting tonight. Really very, very interesting.
Thank you, Admira. I have to tell you, I have enjoyed my journey through the Albanian peoples immensely, and you know, I've loved finding out the similarities and the differences between the Albanians and the Scottish Highlanders.
Yeah, very interesting. I've been to Scotland many times myself, up in the Highlands, and I've seen
God's own country.
Yes, I've discussed with some of the Scottish people there. They've told me, and we have made some comparisons. So I'm finding it extremely interesting. So really, I'm looking forward to reading your book. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is Malcolm Howe? Yes, Malcolm Howe is there, I think.
Oh, lovely. Good.
Can you hear me though?
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah.
You can hear me?
Yep.
Have your question.
Yeah, question is, how many of the tribes in North Albania practice the virgins who dressed as men? Was it just one or two tribes, or was it a lot of them?
No, it was only a few, and the thing about the sworn virgins is that they came about as a practical matter when a small clan had lost its chief, and the only person in line happened to be a woman, and the only way in which she could work for the clan without actually becoming a chief, they were never chiefs, but the only way she could work with the clan was to become, to all intents and purposes, a man, to put trousers on and so on. I have found only about 30 or 40 sworn virgins, and I mention them in my book, each one from, mostly from tribes in the north. I don't find any Vestal virgin, sworn virgins in the southern clans at all, because I do mention the southern tribes and clans, which is something that Robert did not get round to doing, Robert Elsing. He did not get round to doing that. And I wanted to make it as complete as possible, but there's an awful lot of research needs to be done into the southern clans, particularly the clans in Hamaria, because they were devastated by the Greeks. And they lost, you know, they lost so many of their people and their records.
Sorry, Manderit.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
my booklet, A Lifelong Illyrian Love of the Land of the Eagles, about my 3 visits, is available to any member if they just send me their postal address to Malcolm Howe, one word, MALCOLMHOWE, @hotmail.com.
Okay, thank you very much, Malcolm. I'm sure lots of people will do it.
Right, any more questions? I wonder if Noel is there. Noel, are you there?
Is he gone?
No? I just wondered whether Noel would...
I think he left just a little earlier.
Yeah, he's heard it all before. He's also seen 3 drafts of the book, so he knows much of what's in it.
Yeah. I also noticed that our friend Betula is with us.
I hope so. I did send him an invite. Yeah, I do hope so.
Yeah.
Has he got a question?
Not yet, no.
Oh, right. Okay. Oh, well, hello, Betula.
Mal Berisha's got his hand up.
Ah.
You're going to need to unmute yourself.
Who's this?
This is Mike Berisha.
Good evening, everybody. Stephen,
Oh,
Michael, Pat, Joanna, all my friends over there. It's very
lovely to see you.
I'm so happy that we are in Zoom tonight, and I would like to wish to you, everybody, health and prosperity there. I am so happy that Michael has written this fantastic book, and we have been in touch before. Actually, he told me about the project before he had published it, and then when he published it. And I'm very much looking forward to come to London pretty soon and get the book, Michael.
Lovely. Oh, lovely. I look forward to seeing you, Mal.
It's been my pleasure. Actually, I have a question for you, Michael. Since you are talking about the clans of the north of Albania, and you know that I emerged from that part of the region.
Yeah.
How deep did you go to the books or the exploration that you have done to the Berisha clan?
Oh, you get quite a big entry. I've got the book in front of me here. Let me just go to, because it's alphabetical, so you can look everybody up quite easily. But you get quite a good entry. Let me just see where you are. Here we are, Berisha. Yes, you get 1, 2. You get 2.5 pages, which is not bad, really. But I also have been in touch with. Do you know Trim Latifi?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, of course you do. And so I've also mentioned about his about the Berisha DNA project. And I note that in the book, but I also note that there are now additional ways of looking at the cohesiveness of a clan other than DNA. I mean, DNA is very important, but it isn't the sole a way of looking at how a clan was formed. Cultural reasons are of great importance. Language is of great importance, so that people who speak the same language and the same dialect of the same language will often come together under a particular leader, and this shows through many of the North Highland clans.
Well, Michael, let me ask you another question.
Yes.
Have you ever seen, or did you go over a book named The Mountains of Giants, which is a publication of Harvard University of 1950?
Yes, I've got it.
Where they mentioned that the Berisha clan is mentioned in 1270.
Yes, it is. And I note that in the book. I know.
So you have the references of the book.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, you'll find it in the bibliography as well.
So it's a very reliable source.
I hope so, yes.
Well, I don't want to keep the time of all my friends in London, but I am so happy that we are together tonight. But I have also good news for you, my friends there. Only a few days ago, I have published a book named Pushteti I But, which in English means the soft power.
Yes.
And the soft power, which actually was the basic material that I have used in my book. And if you can see, this is the book.
Yes, I noticed it. Yes.
Yeah. Actually, almost half of the book is related to all of the activities that we have organized in the Albanian embassy in London. And I believe all you guys are in my book. Well, when we promoted books of Noel Malcolm, Roderick Bailey, we had friends like Professor Alpion. Of course, there is a good part of the book related to the history of the Anglo-Albanian Association, mentioning all the friends,
yes,
including Ambassador Stephen Nash, Tisha for the Skanderbeg's collection, and on and on. So I'm so happy, and I wish you all the best. We are in the eve of the Christmas. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and hope to see you soon in London.
thank you so much, Mel. And we look. I certainly look forward personally very much to seeing you again. I enjoyed your time at the embassy so much.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity
tonight. The Albanian embassy was great place.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Very nice to see you. And
Pleasure.
I wanted to just pass on to you, Michael. There's a message here from Katie Breyer.
Oh, yes.
Saying, thank you so much, Stephen and Michael. Absolutely fascinating.
Oh.
What I'm not sure is whether that means that she's actually leaving. Possibly, yes. I don't know.
Well, anyway, that's lovely. Well, she'll have heard it all from her father anyway. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
Yeah. Fine. And so, any more questions, anybody? Any more questions? Agron. Yes, any more questions from anybody?
We've got Jed Bakalbashi as well after.
He has a question, does he? Georgi?
Yes.
Georgi Bakalbashi, do you have a question?
Hello.
Hello.
He's muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you now.
I was on mute. Yeah. Sorry, I joined a little late, but I hope that my question hasn't been addressed. So it shows that it's still relevant. Do you have any sense of how the sort of inner laws of each clan relate to the Qanun at large?
Yes, I devote a whole chapter to the Qanun. It's absolutely essential. But there was more than one, as you probably know, there was more than one Qanun written in the mountains, or rather transmitted orally in the mountains. Didn't get written down until the 20th century. But I do devote a whole chapter to the Qanun and the blood feud, because they formed an integral part of the way in which the Albanian, particularly the North Albanian clans, operated. They were defining things, and I also go into detail about the plek, the elders of the tribe, who had to interpret the Qanun and how they could influence the actions of both a chief and also of people complaining and wanting and seeking redress or compensation in the blood feud. So I go into all of that in the book.
Okay, well, I look forward to reading it. Was there a sort of council of the elders, and they would meet every so often with each other?
They were called the plek. Am I pronouncing that right? Plek, Pleq. The plek. Yeah. They were a group of well-respected men, and you know, some of them actually became so well known for their interpretations of the Qanun that even tribes from other areas would seek them out to try and get one of their rulings, because they were known as some of them were known as being very fair-handed. Now, I have to say that there were others who were happy to take bribes and not give the kind of even-handed interpretation of the Qanun that ought to have been given. And I mentioned some of those as well.
And normally there wouldn't be a system of appeals, would there? Like a court or a series of courts?
There was a court. I mean, the one that springs to mind, the largest one that springs to mind, is that of the various tribes of the Mirdita. They had an annual gathering at which these sort of things were discussed. And that was quite important.
And so my last small question,
Yes.
since you touched on the Mirdita clans,
Yes.
were they in any way interacting with the Catholic clergy in their sort of, in how they ruled themselves and how they organized, or is that not?
I would say it was the other way around. The Catholic clergy from the Benedictines at the beginning, and we're talking about the 10th century, from the Benedictines and the Dominicans right through to the Franciscans, the Catholic clergy was extremely influential amongst the Mirdita. And the Mirdita gave their priests a considerable amount of respect. And as you will know, the Mirdita has a territorial abbey in Orosh. And that territorial abbey wielded considerable power and influence amongst the entire Mirdita tribes. And I mean, we're talking with the Mirdita, we're talking about them being about the third. I think they're about the third largest. I can't remember offhand, but I think they were about the third largest clan in terms of their ability to field armed men. And so the popes very early realized that the Mirdita were worth proselytizing, and they did it in a very powerful way, and established bishoprics and so on. And I mention all these in the book, both in the chapter about religion and in the chapter subsequently of the Mirdita, because the Mirdita, the entries in the book are each clan's size reflects the size of its entry. So the bigger the clan, like for example the Kemendi were huge, and as a tribe, and they get a very substantial entry, as well as having lots of mentions throughout the book, and so do the and your own clan, the Anglo-Albanian, they're in there as well.
Oh really?
Yeah. Oh yes. Absolutely.
I didn't know there was a Anglo-Albanian clan. Okay.
Oh, there is. There was. There may not be one now, but there is. Mm.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I write about it anyway. It's
all
not
right.
a very big entry because you can't have been a very big clan. But you know, every clan is important.
Okay, because as far as I know, they were based in the south, but now I'm learning this. I will. Thank you.
Well, you'll read my entry and you'll see what I have to say about them.
All right.
And how they got their name. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Look forward to reading it.
You're welcome. Lovely, and thank you for the question.
Well, thank you, Georgie, for your questions. We now have a very salient question, which is from Gens Miftiu, who I presume is in Tirana. The question is simply, how can we get hold of a copy of the book?
Oh, I'm so glad somebody's asked that question. Well, you can get a copy of the book very simply by sending an email to highlandheritagepress@gmail.com. That's all you have to do.
Gens, is that all right?
Did you get that?
Well, he's written the question on the chat, so maybe.
Oh, has he? Let's go to chat. Hang on, let's go to chat.
Maybe somebody could put the link up on chat.
Where is it?
Michael, put the link up on chat.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now, and I'm looking. There's lots of messages on there. You see. What was the person's name?
Gens Miftiu. Someone I know very well.
What we can do is follow up with the link to the people.
I can't see it.
I think that's
right.
Stu, I think we have one question, and maybe it's the last one.
Well,
I hope so, because I am getting a bit tired now. It's been a busy day for me.
One last question then. That's a good.
From Endri Labute.
Endri.
Hi there.
Yeah,
Hi, thank
good.
you, Michael. Thank you, Stephen. Quick question from my side, if I may. Would you be able to discuss or just elaborate a little bit on the economy of the clans at that point in time, in terms of how they traded? Was there a monetary system as such? And how did that evolve over time with the influence of the Ottomans? And did their clans really have any of their own unique coins or mintages or anything like that at all?
Well, initially, of course, and you've got to remember, I more or less start the book in the 10th century. Initially, all of the Albanian tribes utilized the coinage system that was prevalent in the Byzantine Empire. And that continued until the Serbian Empire, when they used the Serbian monetary system. And then when the Ottomans took over, they, of course, introduced their own coinage, and that was used. As far as the way in which the Albanian clans traded, a lot of it was done by barter. They were prolific breeders of sheep, cattle, goats, and these were very important to their economy. Some of the clans actually also got involved in other forms of trade. For example, there was one particular family, member of a clan in the north, and they were all grocers. and that's what they did. And another one, they were all bakers, and that's what they did. And so they produced their goods and took them to market. And, you know, there were several markets in the Balkans that were used by the Albanian clans. One in Jakova that was very important. And another one just over the border in Montenegro, and another one in North Macedonia. And they would, you know, like any people that specialize in livestock, they would go to these markets on regular occasions, often on saints' days, and trade whatever they had to trade for whatever they wanted. But one of the most interesting things were the weapons. Now, a lot of the weapons that the Albanians had were manufactured in Italy, particularly in northern Italy, and in Venice. And of course, these had to be bought in. But what tended to happen was the Ottomans liked the Venetian weapons. They made their own as well, the Ottomans. They would buy them, and then the Albanians would steal them from the Ottomans. And they used to do this wholesale. And I mentioned several incidents when thousands, literally thousands of muskets went missing. So, you know, they had a trade in all sorts of ways, but they also had the trade of banditry, which they didn't regard as being any bad thing at all. My own clan in the North Highlands of Scotland in the 16th century, they were bandits, and often fell foul of the law and got proscribed, and then came back again. And yeah, it's interesting to follow that economic chain.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Question. We've got a nice message here from Ida Haziri.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Stephen, for this meeting. Thank you, Michael, for the wonderful talk and answering all those questions. We learned a lot about your book tonight. Can't wait to read the book.
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, yeah, that's excellent. Okay, fine. That's lovely. Yeah.
I think we are going to draw the event to a close. It's at least 8:30 around then.
Yes.
And we've been at it since 7 o'clock. And you've had a much longer Q&A, Michael, than anybody else, as far as I know. I mean,
really? Oh, I'm so thrilled. Thank you.
and how much people enjoyed your answers to the questions. That threw a lot more light on the issues. And thank you so much, Michael, for your wonderful contribution and the stamina you showed for answering the questions, but also thank you for thank you to the members of the audience who were all very lively, and there were so many stimulating questions coming through. That was excellent. And thank you very much to Arber, who, as usual, has managed to keep us
all connected
in a way that I never understand, but he always manages to do it. Thank you so much, Arber. And also the others who were involved in various ways at various stages in setting up this event. But it has been, I think, a very enjoyable event. One thing we haven't managed to do, though, and I thought I had to mention this, is we were hoping to have a Christmas party at the end of the event. But I'm afraid we can't do a Christmas party, but we can at least say Happy Christmas to each other as we part. But
yeah, indeed. Happy Christmas. Nole Critiul agus Brianna Fawr.
Which language? Yes.
That's Happy Christmas and a good New Year.
Right. Well, I don't know whether anybody else has anything else they want to say. Arva, do you want to say anything? No, right.
Thank you so much, Arva, for all your help. I'm so appreciative of it. Thank you.
And thank you, everybody, for being here. And we have enjoyed it very much. So happy Christmas, everybody.
Happy Christmas.
Good night.
Happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Christmas.
Happy New Year.